my best work is still in front of me. I always feel like I'm still always striving for the next piece.
Hello, print friends, and welcome. This is a bilingual podcast, so if you subscribe to us, you'll be getting episodes in English with me, as well as in Spanish with Reynaldo Gil Zambrano. Together, we speak to people around the globe about their practice and passions in the field of print media and multiples. Did you know that Hello Print Friend is now also a studio and artist residency in Chiang Mai, Thailand? That's right, Hello Print Friend Studios specializes in stone and plate lithography with additional facilities for woodcut, monotype, dry point, and we've just added screen printing. Your residency fee covers housing and all materials plus 40 hours per week of dedicated collaboration with master printer Timothy Pauschak. Whether you want to create a new edition, immerse yourself in the vibrant culture of northern Thailand, or deepen your lithography practice, we invite you to apply. Learn more at helloprintfriendstudios.com. This episode is brought to you by Legion Paper. Legion Paper is a fine art paper company that represents the best papers in the world. They either stock it, source it, or make it with brands like Stonehenge, Somerset, Coventry, Reeves, Arches, and more. Legion is the best paper resource for every artist and printmaker's needs. Learn more about the variety of papers Legion stocks at www.legionpaper.com. My guest this week is Mary Farrell, a printmaker based in Spokane, Washington. We talk about how Mary's upbringing with a father who worked in tuberculosis research and a mother who had a near miss with a life in a convent created a childhood that shaped her perspective as an artist. We also explore her long love affair with the human figure, her fascination with the parallels between the human body and the natural world, and how she uses printmaking processes like mezzotint to pull light from darkness, literally and metaphorically. It's a conversation about labor, love, and the lifelong unfolding of her artistic voice. A reminder that, as Mary says, our best work is always still ahead of us. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Mary Farrell. Hi, Mary. How's it going?
It's good.
Good. It's really nice to see you. I got to have the pleasure of doing a studio visit with you was it last month? I think it was just last month, actually.
It was.
Yeah. I was in Spokane for a family wedding. And of course, I know you from even far before because we worked together during my time at Davidson, but it was really nice to spend some time together in person and see your lovely studio and your practice. And I'm just excited for the chance to have a chat about your work and share more with the Hello Print friends.
Yeah, it was a treat to have you and Tim to the studio and look through the work and talk about the process. And I love people coming to my studio. I love being able to do that. And it was great to have you guys because you're just so attentive to it. And that was wonderful.
Oh, yeah. It's such a fun and lovely experience and intimate too. When you walk into an artist studio, you really walk into kind of like their brain,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
You get
Right.
everything, just the little details of their process and what books do they have? Was their sketching, that kind of
And
stuff.
I feel that way when I
Yeah.
walk into my studio. I feel like I'm coming into
Mm.
my zone, into my air. I love coming into my studio. It just is wonderful.
Beautiful. Before we get started, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. And I always ask guests to just do that by saying who you are, where you are, what you do.
I'm a printmaker primarily, and I live in Spokane, Washington. I grew up in Kentucky and moved to Spokane from Cincinnati and came here to run the printmaking program at Gonzaga University, which I did for about 25
Mhm.
years until I retired. And yeah, so now I'm enjoying being able to have the time to not be teaching and to be focused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said you're from Kentucky. What role did art play in that part of your life growing up?
I was making art from my earliest memories. I found a little frame that my mother had of me as a baby picture, and in the back of it, she had all these little drawings I had done, these little scribble drawings that she cut up and put in the back of this frame. And so I was always making art, and my parents were very supportive of that. My dad was really into me being an artist. I think tried to get me private art lessons when I was like in first or second grade. And yeah, it was very supported in my family. And the arts were a big part of it. People played music, and we the school I went to, the arts were very supported, and we would have poets come in and read to us, and we go to the symphony, and we had art history all through grade school, and art history was a class through high school. And so I don't know, arts were always just, I was the artist. I was from a big family, and I think in big families, it's really often people are given a role, given a clear identity. You're the artist, you're the musician, you're the scientist, I was the artist.
Yeah.
So, to the chagrin sometimes of my sister, and I would do things she didn't like, and my dad would say, "She's an artist."
I want more of that as a magic wand to wave in my life.
Right. I
It's
can't
just
really
like,
get away with
why is
that
it like that?
anymore.
She's an artist. That's why that's that way. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Your parents were so supportive. What did they do? Were they in creative fields at all?
My dad was a doctor. His area was TB, and yeah,
Tuberculosis?
uh-huh, yeah. In fact,
Oh, wow.
he started so he was in Northern Kentucky, and back then, if you had TB, you were sent into a sanatorium, and you would be gone for years, possibly. And there wasn't one in Northern Kentucky, so he had a bond issue passed and built sanatorium in Northern Kentucky, and he ran it and was the chief doctor there, and yeah, that was what he was into. And my mother, so they were 19 years apart, and my mother was his secretary for 8 years before they got married. And he was 48 when he got married, so he was much older. And
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, that was his.
Was that like, sorry to say, I feel like that's just a fascinating backdrop for a young artist to grow up in, to have this like very medical and doing, of course, very serious work.
Mhm.
Tuberculosis is the deadliest disease in human history, right? Like
Right.
it shaped our history. It shaped, in a way what it is to be human. And of course has, apocryphal or not, a kind of romantic connection to art and artistic temperaments. You can imagine all the Victorian poets like Keats, who
Oh,
so famously succumbed.
they would die beautifully, a little flushed from the fever. Right.
Yeah, like pale skin, very thin, rosy cheeks. And that nature of it being such a long illness, and this idea that you have this necessity to contemplate your own mortality for a long time, which I think, of course, also leads to artistic and philosophical reflection. But anyway, all of that is to say, it's just a really interesting backdrop for me to think about a young artist growing up in that space, because it does have all of those associations with in the formation of the idea of an artist being someone a little bit apart from the world. And so that idea of Mary can do that, she's an artist, it just seems like it's all in the same sphere.
And it's also since he was so much older when he got married and doing this very serious work, and then he had 7 children at that point, and so he was always working. He was busy. He was always very busy person. And I think there was this sense among all of us that you work hard. good people work hard. I think that was a really clear message that came through. And so
It's so American.
yeah, and I think all of my siblings are high achievers, like always felt that they had to do just really good work, really serious work. And yeah. And in fact,
Yeah.
my mother, this is a funny little aside, but if she kept waiting for my dad to ask her to marry him, and he didn't for a long time. And so she was going to go and be a medical missionary in India. And
Wow.
finally sent her suitcase off to the nunnery. And she has this scrapbook with all these letters. But you know how when people have letters, but it's the responses to their letter. So you're putting together the history from the responses to the person's letter. So my mother had a brother who was a missionary in India, and she would write to him about all of this, and he would answer her. There were these letters back from the nuns at the convent in Pennsylvania where she was visiting to join. And there's this letter about her visit, and she came, and it was wonderful that she came, and they're looking forward to her coming. And then there was a letter after my dad finally thought, jump on this. And the letter is from the nun saying, "Dear Dr. Farrell, thank you for your generous contribution to our convent." So it's like he paid them off. And
Yeah.
then the rest is all of us. So I think she approached her
Oh my
life
God.
with such dedication because that's what she wanted. She wanted something she could commit to. So just giving you both sides of the picture there, my father and my mother.
I feel like tuberculosis sanatoriums and nunneries. It's such a it's a shame.
And another funny thing with
An evocative backdrop.
and with my dad, because he was Irish heritage, and I think it was the Irish with big families was a great custom of a lot of unmarried siblings to stay at home. So he would say to me all the time, "You can be an artist, you don't have to get married. You don't have to get married. You can stay at home and be an artist." So I thought that was an interesting kind of encouragement.
And that idea that, being married is somehow in opposition to being an artist.
Right.
I think particularly we actually were talking about this, touching on this a little bit, circling around it before we started recording, particularly expectations for women
Right.
and artists who are going to have babies and who's going to be the caretaker and what does that mean for your career and all of this kind of stuff. And I would guess particularly if you were of the early 19th century framework, early 20th century framework, that would seem like an opposition. Though it's either you can be an artist or you can get married, particularly as a woman.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in a way, it was a little bit of progressive advice, not that
Yeah.
David is coming from.
Be a career woman. Yeah.
Yeah.
And growing up with this identity of the one of seven and you're the artist, did you always think you were going to go to art school?
Oh, absolutely. I guess I always thought I was going to make art. And my family, my dad's primary thing for us was education. That was
Mm,
totally the most important thing, to get educated
yeah.
and have good education. I don't think I ever doubted I'd be continuing education in the arts. This was
Yeah.
a really important part of our lives.
Did you have any conception, Gramp, about printmaking, that it was a thing, that it was a side of the arts, or was that something that you found
No,
through your education?
not really. I think drawing was my avenue
Mm.
in always. It was drawing. And I didn't really have any printmaking through high school. There, in any of the art classes I took, the first introduction to any printmaking was my first time through college. So I went 3 years and then dropped out and went back later. And we did some woodcut. And so that was my
Mm.
first introduction, carving ponderosa pine blocks. And yeah, that was the only introduction. And so then later, when I went back to finish school, I had seen work by an artist, April Foster, who taught at the Art Academy of Cincinnati, where I went back to finish, and they were her lithographs. And I remember looking at
Mm.
those and thinking, oh, these are beautiful. And there's so much like drawing. And so when I went to the Art Academy, I focused on printmaking. And so that's where I really learned all the different processes in printmaking and fell in love with it.
And then did you knew that you were going to teach? Like when does that identity that you spoke of as a professor fit into your story?
I had no idea I was going to teach. In fact, when I finished up undergraduate, my teachers were saying, "Oh, Mary, you should teach. You should go into teaching." So I don't want to teach. I don't want to teach. I just want to make art. I thought that somehow would minimize my making art. And so then after I graduated undergraduate, I was doing all kinds of adjunct teaching and freelance jobs and making art. And I thought, you know what? I'm showing myself that I can do all this work and still make art. So wouldn't it be
Mm.
better to actually have a full-time teaching job and then make art? So at that
Yeah.
point, I went to graduate school. And really, I would say the two reasons were one, to reestablish conversation about the work, and two, to get the degree
Mhm.
so that I could teach. So I went back and got my master's and got hired at Gonzaga directly out of graduate school. In fact, my thesis show was up when I went to interview, but I was older. I was in my 40s when I started at Gonzaga. So, I had done many other things by the time I got there. Yeah.
Do you feel like, that having that background of having gone and lived a bit more before really informed your graduate school experience? I assume it must have in some way, but I often reflect on, I don't know if you call it irony, but maybe almost like the conflict between taking people who are 22 and putting them in graduate school and saying, now this is your time to make your magnum opus.
Well, graduate school is a tricky thing. I think it is way better to have some sense of who you are before you go in there and have people knocking you around, questioning what you do,
Mm.
if you don't have anything formed yet on your own. But I
Yeah.
think by the time I got there, I was so driven to get on this path I, that it made me, I think a lot of the younger people who were in graduate school when I was there had more fun. were they were willing to go play and do
Mhm.
everything. I had my daughter, and I had a whole different set of situations in my life at that time. There was a lot of serious things going on. I had several friends that were very ill, and just lots of things that were happening at the same time. And I was working while I went to grad school. And so it just was busy and serious and applying for these
Yeah.
jobs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but
So going very focused
right.
and knowing exactly why you were there. It's got to be helpful too in its own way, though, for sure, is saying that I'm doing this with a set goal.
Yeah. And it was interesting because so it was a 2-year program, which is tricky because it's nice you come in with where you are, And then you want to let that go and figure out something else and then come to some kind of result. I think that's the path it should be. But that's really condensed when it's a 2-year program. But I ended up doing my whole thesis in mezzotint. And
Oh my gosh.
because my teachers were saying, "Oh, Mary, with your monoprints, I bet you would really love mezzotint." I said, "Oh, okay." But none of them knew how to do mezzotint. So I had to teach myself mezzotint and ended up doing
Wow.
my whole thesis show in mezzotint, which was interesting. Yeah.
And at that point, do you feel like you had found what you would consider your artistic voice, or did that come later in your life as a teacher and a working artist?
I, th- I think that's ongoing. And I can say that at my age, I still think it's ongoing. I always feel
Yeah.
like my best work is still in front of me. I always feel like I'm still always striving for the next piece. But I certainly feel like I, for the first time, really experienced some sense of what metaphor is in my work and some sense of putting some things together and it's interesting. I'm sitting here at my desk looking at some pieces that were in my thesis show in front of me here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and discovering just some really beautiful connections in the work that I had never done before. And so it really came together, I think, in a real powerful way that I was able to take with me moving on to Gonzaga. Yeah.
I know a lot of your work deals with the really, I say the human figure, but also other natural forms.
Hmm.
You have a series of mezzotint portraits, which just seems like quite an ambitious thing to take on. Have you always been drawn to the figure in the face and in how you're exploring the world?
I always have loved doing the figure, always. Yes. And it's just the most exquisite form to work with. And it's always a challenge. It's always a new, exciting thing.
Mm.
And I think the natural forms are an extrapolation of that kind of structure. But I think that one of the
Mhm.
big differences is that when I'm dealing with a figure, there is a human being in front of me that I am both objectifying them, but I am also really dealing with a real person. And so that I'm a big introvert. And so there's a part of me that has to also deal with that person as I'm drawing them. It's something I've been thinking about where there's a difference between this object when I'm observing it and completely objectifying it. And a lot of the forms are similar, but there isn't the presence of a human that I'm observing in this objective way, but also dealing with their energy, and my energy interacting with them as I'm doing them. And there's something about that is also really important to the challenge of the piece and to bringing some of that energy into the figure in the final piece. Obviously, on some of my processes, I can't have the person there for the whole time. So, like, often I will do a monotype from the model and possibly then print it on wood and then carve the wood. Or I'll do a monotype and then I go to do the mezzotint and I'm looking at the monotype as I'm working the mezzotint. Or I'll do a drawing and then take a photo to have an additional piece of information. But there's stuff that I get in the drawing that I would never see in the photograph, like a beautiful
Right.
little curve of a muscle or something that is just so beautiful that I'm keying into. And the way that we interact with space when I'm in the space with
Right.
the figure that is entirely different than what a photo camera would do. It's some of what I love when I look at I just find it really interesting because when you're doing like a large piece, you have to move when you're doing that. Like I'm doing like a life-size figure, I have to move. I'm getting lower as I'm drawing, I'm getting higher as I'm drawing. And so my interaction with that form is changing. And I love how that works, where it would be completely other than that if I was just photographing and going from a photograph. Anyway, it's a long answer to your question.
No, there's so much interesting in there because I'm thinking about what you're saying about having this energetic exchange between you and the person you're drawing. And of course, there's that really long and sometimes fraught art historical tradition of models in the studio and who becomes a model, the power dynamic, the fact that a model can model and get 2.5 euros an hour or something, and then a piece might sell for six figures or something, depending on the artist. And just this really interesting relationship between artist and model that goes back a very long time. But one of the things that humans like in artwork is humans. We love, like, we are really drawn to it. We're drawn to faces, we're drawn to forms, we're drawn to bodies. And a lot of your practice has these bodies that are almost seeming to be weightless. Like a lot of them, you're seeing them at different angles, at bending over on their side or put on the page in a way that almost looks like they're floating. And a lot of what stands out, of course, is the fact that you're drawing people at quite difficult angles. Your draftsmanship really shines. It's as a non-artist, I am just like, I can draw a face in profile, but like you're really going in there and creating just with the human form, these really intriguing images because I think partly there's just you see the challenge of it coming through, but partly because you're seeing bodies in ways that you don't necessarily always see them. And that invites the viewer to I think look closer and with more attention because of that.
Another thing, Miranda, that I think is interesting, I often read about poses that different male artists and then talking to their models in books or historically, and these really painful positions they had the models
Mm.
in, and the models had to stay in those positions. And I think I could never do that. I think me as a woman with a model, I have a whole different,
Mm.
I would love if I could have a model hold that really horrible position, but I would never do it. I would
Yeah.
never be
Yeah.
very aware of how the model is feeling as they're posing and would not demand that. Maybe some of my models would have a different thing to say about that. But because I love some very articulated forms, but
Yes,
the
you
way
do.
that I often will do that is to have them do things separately. Like now we'll just hold that arm here,
Mhm.
and now we'll just do this, so that they're not
Oh,
in this
really?
really
Okay.
difficult position for a super long time.
That's really smart. Because yeah, I feel like when you said articulated forms, I'm thinking about your figurative work and then but also the natural work, the branches, the knots, the nests, right?
Mhm.
And there's definitely that through line from the limbs and the torso of your models and of course to the other natural forms that show up in
Definitely, and I think that's really I love that. I love the connection in nature between all of these forms. You have these roots, you have rivers, you have the veins running through the body, you have the little neural pathways in the brain, but they're all kind of these similar structures. And the thing that I have responded to a lot are the connections between skin patterns and topographical marks on the land and how similar they can look. And all of these connections of us to nature were not separate from nature, we're part
Mm.
of it. And I think if we could all recognize that and respond to it, it would be really good. for the world, for the planet.
And because you've done sometimes quite ambitious topographical projects. Thank you. And like the one that you actually did relating to your family, that Soil Made Visible project, where you were actually collaborating with some of your high achieving siblings. Could you, yeah, could you speak to that a little bit? Because that's such an interesting project.
So one of my sisters is a soil scientist, and in fact, a lot of her research was in Belize and the Yucatan, studying kind of the soil and old Mayan ruins. But anyway, we had talked often about it would be wonderful to do some kind of a collaborative project, and we discussed a lot of things, and then thought about what if I carve this enormous root structure, we cut it up, and then we bury it in each of the siblings' soils and leave it there, and then come back and unearth it and analyze that and put it back together and carve it again. And so we did this, and it was just such an interesting project on all of the kind of very human levels. The way each of the
Mm.
siblings and their children or their grandchildren got into the whole experience of burying the wood in one of my brother's houses. The police came. What are you doing?
Oh my gosh.
But all of it was just so interesting. And then all of the soils that my sister was interested in, the fact that they were all actually very domesticated soils. And by the time where each of their homes are. And it went from Seattle, Spokane, Duluth, Cincinnati, Kentucky, Scranton, Pennsylvania. So really spread out all over. And then the really fascinating thing was to dig it up. We left it 2 years to dig it up and see the condition of each of the soil, and then to think about that sibling and look at this piece of wood
Mm.
and then put it back together, which was quite a challenge to reprint. And then just our own stories about, oh, look at this piece. Look at this. It's almost completely unchanged, except it broke coming out. And this one is completely hardly, it's like mush. And it was just really and wonderfully, again, metaphoric concept between we all start as this one contiguous root, right? And now we've all gone our own ways and we're very different. And when you try to put us back together, it's challenging and it's broken, it's separate.
Mm.
And so it was a really fascinating project.
I worked so much on that metaphorical level and that idea of people's connection to the land that they're on, and how I think particularly as contemporary Americans, movement is such a part of almost every family's story. I don't think I've ever met anyone who has a story of every sibling is still in the hometown. And the US, of course, is just massive and so diverse. So we leave for school, we leave for lovers, we leave for work. And so that dispersal of the family, the original family unit, is so common. And so that questions about adopting new homes and maintaining connections, it's all, yeah, I feel like it's a very American experience. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it absolutely. And again, the connection to the land, which I find really important and interesting.
You've done a few projects collaborating with family members, your sister, your husband through his writing. What's your experience doing those close relational collaborations in the artistic world?
And just to speak about some of the things I've done with my husband, there was one piece that I did that means a lot to me, and that was Meditations on Skin. That one, so back in 2005, he had a stroke, and it was like in January. And I had a show coming up that summer, and I was trying to both care for him and do work. And so I would have little bits of time to run in the studio, and I started doing these. So I had prints from both my skin patterns from my hands and feet and his hands and feet. And I would blow those up. I would photograph them at angles. So I had them at all different patterns, and they looked like land topography. And so I would do these tiny little drawings with powdered graphite and alcohol on mylar. And they would be about this big. And by the time I finished, there were over 100 of them. And I put them up as this enormous piece and meditations on skin. And I thought, this means so much, because this is like this little study of landscape, but it's our landscape, and it's what I have been able to do during this time with him. And I don't know, that piece has always been really beautiful to me. And so I've continued to use both his I've done many things with my daughter too, where I use elements of like her drawings of her hands and my hands overlapping, and I've used a lot of my husband's poetry in my work, often contextually, so you can't necessarily always read it. Sometimes it's just a layer that's in the piece, but it's something I'm responding to, or a line from a piece. Like he has this beautiful poem about the act of creation called Origami Mantis, where he's talking about, creating an origami, praying mantis out of origami. And there are these gorgeous lines on it: split open my belly, and lay me bare. And I think of that in relation to some of these nest forms that I do, which to me are all about family and roots and all of the complication of that. Or he had another beautiful line from another poem. I think I showed you this piece when you were in my studio: the very lovely things that make one fear, the very fearful things that make one love. Lines like that I just, there's something in them that gives me an impetus for an image in my work. And so we've had this collaboration. In fact, we just did a show where he actually had 10 of his poems there. And it's the first time we've ever done that. And it was really lovely. It was really beautiful to do that.
How did your collaborations begin? Was that something that you just felt natural as two creative people in relationship? Or was this like a very conscious decision? Like, when did you start that process?
I just think it was very natural. It's because I respond in my work. I work from observation, and I work from a response to something. So I'm very aware of my immediate world, and these people are in my immediate world. And so I'm responding to them and pulling them in, using them. I've had my family members sit for me, pose for me often, and maybe that's where I can bridge that line of my kindness to my other models. I can feel a little more directive with my family members. So they've always been in my work in one way or the other. So this is, always from posing, from drawing them directly, or as my work develops, then these different elements that I work with expand to different elements with them too.
And so, are most of the portraits in your practice people that are in your immediate life?
Yes. Yeah. So most of the portraits that I get, you're talking about the little mezzotint portraits, become or friends that have also been models for me or family members, husband, daughter, grandson. Yeah. But then I also,
So,
yeah, I was going to say, but then I also
no, go ahead.
models. But a lot of times, if I'm
Right,
working with somebody for a long time, they also become a friend. So it's
right.
that closeness sort of develops in the process. Yeah.
I'm always curious because, again, portraiture is a perennial topic in the visual arts. It's always so interesting. It's always difficult and difficult technically, but very intriguing when we see it done well. In your mind, what makes a good portrait? Either define that as what outcomes do you pursue, or how do you know when something is done? Like, truly, what makes a portrait a good one or a successful one for you in your practice?
So I don't feel like I'm trying to make something look exactly like a person. So it
Mhm.
isn't something where someone is hiring me to do a portrait. In fact, I find that really difficult. I feel like I'm going to look at that person and I'm going to do what I want to do with them. And then I'm free. And then often it's does very much resemble them, but I don't think we have any one thing that is us ever because we have all these
Mm.
different sides and all these different movements. And I just got this beautiful catalog of John Wilson. And I'm just trying to see where did he oh, he's having a show in Boston, Museum of Arts in Boston. And there is this beautiful portrait he did, many portraits that he did of Martin Luther King. And it's you choose a moment. You say, okay, I'm going to capture this person at this moment in this look. And there's this beautiful print etching he did of him. And I actually love because in this catalog, they show this wonderful thing that printmaking does, where it shows you the proofs along the way. So you can see how the artist is thinking and how he worked with
Yeah.
these and how he arrived at the final choice. And again, it's just a choice. It's saying, okay, now this is good. But it's just one aspect of the person. It's your vision of them. You know, it might not be anybody else's vision of them, but it's your vision of them. And you're choosing the moment that you want to show of them or the side you want to show of them or how you want to make them. So that's how I approach it.
That's such an interesting point about the multiplicity of people and how a portrait is clearly just one moment in time. And so as the artist, you have to pick.
Mhm.
Yeah, like you have to choose from the infinity of what a human is and what a human identity is. What are you going to freeze frame to immortalize them? Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Yeah, yeah. And so, in terms of like your process, you mentioned the mezzotint portraits. Mezzotint, one of its original functions was to be a reproduction method before we had photography. So if you were a earl in Nuremberg and you wanted to see the Sistine Chapel, but you didn't want to go through all the travel and the danger of crossing the Alps, you could send an artist to do it. And they would bring back a mezzotint of the Sistine ceiling. And I mentioned that to give context to it as a process is very good at getting details and curves and light and shadow and to reproduce in a really striking likeness other works, human features, and that sort of thing. And so is that for you, is that what makes doing portraits in mezzotint interesting? Is the inherent capacity of the medium to have all of those different tones to create that sense of three-dimensional quality. Is it just the challenge of it? Is it because you said you did your thesis in it? Like, why mezzotint for portraiture?
So, you know, what I really love about printmaking, one of the things I love, is how it pushes drawing. So, with
Mm.
each of the different tools, it's challenging, it's creating a new opportunity to make a different kind of mark. And often with a rocker, I will draw with the rocker. I'm not always just doing a straight classic mezzotint. I love taking the rocker and the way it can rock and make particular lines and marks, and then coming in with a roulette. And all of that, again, is creating a different way to do the drawing. And
Hmm.
I think I think when I'm doing it in the more classical way, it's that I love pulling the light from the darkness. I really respond to that subtractive kind of drawing. And so when I'm choosing to do the mezzotint, I'm choosing to want to do something that I want to have multiples of, where I'm working subtractively. And so that's
Mm.
when I work with the mezzotint.
That's really beautiful. Do you feel that I loved what you said towards the beginning of our chat here, where you said you feel like your best work is in front of you. When you're being self-reflective like that as an artist and you're thinking like, I do feel like my best work is ahead of me. Do you feel like you have a goal on the horizon that you go towards as an artist, where you say, I want this to be the year that it could either be professionally, I have this show or I make this many works, or artistically in the sense of I feel like I master this technique, where it's very clear in your mind where you want to be? Or is it more of a sense of the story is unfolding with each step that you take for you in your journey as an artist, and that sense of hope and excitement about where it's going?
I think it's more unfolding, because I think I have
Mm.
this through so many experiences in my life. I have this sense that we have no idea what's coming down the pike. It could be anything. And I don't always feel like anymore in my life, like I can project out too far. I just think,
Mm.
okay, right now, I just got through doing a lot of shows. And right now, I'm really looking forward to spending time on a print that I can really get into just one piece and then move on to the next piece, rather than thinking in terms of a show where everything has to be complete and have a relationship to everything else. So that lets me think about a piece where I can just really clearly, I'm thinking of etching. I'm thinking of adding mezzotint. I'm thinking,
Mhm.
and I often add multiple other processes, but something where I can just really work a plate and mess with it and see where it goes. So, and then what I'm hoping is that piece, of course, will be exquisitely wonderful. And then it will lead me to the next piece where, that will be the path. I go crazy when I'm in between things. I'm only really
Uh-huh.
happy when I'm actually working on a piece. And it's the working on it, the process of it, that fulfills me. And then there's the stuff that comes from it, the actual prints, and those are wonderful, but then I'm eager to get on to the next piece, get my hand moving again,
Yeah, I
and
totally understand.
yeah, and I feel like there are punctuated pieces, like, through all of my work over the years. I think there are, okay, that piece and that piece, and I hope that the next piece I'm working on will be one of those pieces, but I don't know. It's just getting into it. And I feel like I have to really, well, and what I liked is working a piece, working it, pulling it through, making another decision, working that, making another decision, and then finally finding the peace, finding it, resolving it, and going, okay, hoping it's wonderful.
I love that. I think that's a beautiful note to wrap up on. Where can people find you, Mary? Where can they follow you and see your work and see the punctuated pieces that are coming out of your studio?
I do have a website, and I'm actually going to be redoing it probably around beginning of the year, working on reorganizing it and making it a little easier to follow, and possibly, if I can figure out getting myself into something where I can actually put information in there easily. You used to be able to find me at Davidson, but so sadly they have closed. I also am on Instagram, but I'm very bad at posting. So probably my website. And then I'm with a gallery here in town, Saranac Gallery. I'm in a show currently at the Junt Art Museum that'll be up through into December. And yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for spending some time with me this evening. And it's been really nice to chat. I always have enjoyed working with you so much. And I look forward to our paths continuing to cross, because I know they will in the print world.
Me too, Miranda. And I love all that you're doing, and all of the artists that I've gotten to know more about by listening to your podcasts and seeing. I'm one of those people that's a junkie for all the little posts of somebody running a print through the press and pulling up the print.
Yeah.
I get lost watching those over and over.
It never gets old.
No, it never does.
So good every time. If you like today's episode, we have a Patreon where you can help support our podcast and get bonus content, like Shop Talk Shorts with past guests. But the very best thing you can do to support this podcast is listen, rate, follow, and share with your fellow print friends around the world. This episode, like all episodes, was written and produced by me, Miranda Metcalf, with music by Joshua Weber. I'll see you in 2 weeks.